Welcome back, everybody. I am here, as I so often am, with my colleague Shannon Vasconcelos, who's a former financial aid officer at both Tufts and BU. Hi, Shannon.
Hi Beth, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
The scary thing is that every time I do my notes for the call, I have to think, wait, is it Tufts and BU? I have that right, right? You would
You
think
do.
that I would have
You
it
have it
nailed by
memorized.
now. Exactly. All right, well, we're doing what we do, which is we're going to answer listener questions. Just as a
Yes.
reminder to people who are listening, you can post your questions on Facebook, you could post them on Instagram, you could post them on LinkedIn, you could direct message us on any of those apps if you want to send in questions. All right, the first question comes to us from Natalie, and Natalie asks, is there a net price calculator for graduate programs? What is the financial aid process for these undergraduate students who have entered 3+2 programs or other such programs? Are students required only to fill out FAFSA, and are parents' income still required for the graduate portion of the programs? I'm noticing that the undergraduate merit scholarships at most of these programs are only awarded for the undergraduate portion and are not applicable during the graduate years.
Yeah, so a lot going on there, but Natalie, I think your kind of general estimation that the scholarships are only applicable to the undergraduate portion tends to be correct. There is generally no net price calculator, unfortunately, for graduate programs. That is only a federal requirement for undergraduate programs. So you do really have to sort of reach out more individually to each school for their particular policy. There is a lot of variability here, and that may actually entail a conversation with both the financial aid office and potentially the academic department that grad program is in. The way that it works typically with these kind of dual undergrad grad programs is that at some point over the 5 years, or it's occasionally a 6-year program, the student is officially transitioned from being a bachelor's degree candidate to being a master's degree candidate. And that happens at different points in different programs. I've seen it at the 3-year mark, at the 3.5-year mark, and at the 4-year mark. So that will depend on the school, the program. But whenever that happens, generally the student ceases receiving undergraduate aid at that point, and they are now eligible for financial aid as a graduate student. Now, for graduate studies, there doesn't tend to be tons of the sort of traditional grants and scholarships that we see as an undergrad. Um, what you see more commonly in terms of free money for grad school is an assistantship, where you're kind of working a job, either as a teaching assistant or a research assistant, and you get sort of tuition remission as part of the arrangement. Outside of that, you're largely seeing graduate students paying for their studies with lots and lots of student loans.
Yep.
Um, so and as a graduate student, you are actually eligible for much more in student loans than you were as an undergrad student. The direct Stafford loan program, where you can get like $5,000 to $7,000 a year as an undergrad, you can all of a sudden get over $20,000 for most graduate degree programs per year. And then you can also borrow what they call a graduate plus loan, which is like the parent plus loan that parents of undergraduate students can borrow, but it's now totally in the grad student's name. As part of the financial, so that's how federal financial aid works. You're eligible for more in student loans as a graduate student. In terms of any institutional aid offered by the school itself, that can really vary. There are some schools that may require parental information still, even as a graduate student. When I worked at Tufts Dental School, that was the case. We had a very limited amount of need-based grant money, but in order to apply for that, you had to apply with parental information. You could get the federal student loans on your own as a graduate student. The parent information was not required for that, but it was for the limited amount of institutional grant money. that we had. So again, just a lot of variability, but typically you're transitioned at some point in the program from undergrad to grad student where things can really change. So if you are considering one of these programs, definitely recommend talking to the school. They likely have some information on their website, but if you need more than that, talk to the financial aid office, talk to the academic department of that graduate program so that you can really plan for, you know, the length of your program, because it may change when you enter official graduate student territory.
All right. Lot going on there.
Yes, definitely. It can definitely get complicated. So my first question for you comes in from Christina. And she says, my son is a high school senior and is concerned with his course schedule. It's pretty different from what he requested, but spaces in the desirable courses are tough to get this year. He currently has 5 classes and 1 free period at the end of the day. His 5 classes are AP Bio, AP Stats, AP Literature, Business Law, and Theater. His choice would be to add AP Macro as his 6th course, but it is full. Is he okay leaving a free period since he can't get what he wants, or should he try to add a 6th, even if it's a non-AP? And by the way, she knows that we tend to recommend foreign language. The reason that he has no foreign language this year is that he took AP Spanish 5 last year, and there is no higher Spanish at his school.
Okay.
And I'm going to venture a guess. Here, let me answer this question, Beth. The answer is, it depends.
It does depend. The one thing that strikes me as I look at this question and the classes that your son is taking, Christina, is that at some schools, they may only really feel like he has 3 core courses because business law and theater may in their minds not really count as academic courses. Now, the schools that I'm thinking about are the most selective schools in the country. So if he's not shooting for those, it's really less of an issue. And I don't know what the high school considers business law and or theater. You know, I don't know if theater is a literature or an English course. Sometimes they, you know, study theater, you study plays and things like that. So there's a little bit that I don't know here. What I would say is that if he could add another course, it probably would be good. And I would only do it though if it's an academic course. So one of the things that I see is, so he's maxed out on the foreign language at his school, which is fine, but I don't really see a social science, and maybe they consider business law that, but if he could add a straight up history course or something like psychology or something like that, that would fall into the social science or history realm, that might be a good addition. I would worry less that it's an AP and more that it's a core, right? So maybe it's that he doubles up in science. Again, not ideal because he's already done with foreign language. So in theory, he should be doubling up on something to make up for the loss of the foreign language. So I would say that in a perfect world, he would add a history or a social science. And again, it's really, I don't know what he's shooting for, what type of schools he's looking for. So that's my best advice there. And at this stage, it's October. I'm not sure that our answer is coming in soon enough. We do answer these pretty quickly after we get them. It's just that we don't, we have to wait until we have a show where we're taping the listener Q&A, and then we tape a week in advance. And so that's the problem with the lag. But if this is helpful to others who are thinking about this, for what it's worth, one last suggestion that I have, this is not an uncommon thing where students don't get the schedule that they had hoped for. Actually, it's happened in my own house this year, and there was some scrambling, but ultimately the school was able to make it work. But if they couldn't have, then I had asked my son's school counselor to address that in her letter of support. So that's something that you could talk to the school counselor about. And then lastly, there is usually a spot, there certainly is on the Common application, for additional information, something that you need to share about the application. And so if the school counselor has so many students that they're not even writing a letter, there really just isn't that opportunity for the counselor to address it. Or if you feel like you ask them to address it, but you just want to be so sure that the school knows about it, then your son could address it in the additional information section and say, this is the course load that I requested. Unfortunately, these were the only classes that fit, and I was not able to take whatever those classes were that he wasn't able to take. So the college at least knows that that was what he was trying to do, and that he wasn't just trying to take it easy his senior year.
Right. Perfect.
All right, Shannon. This question comes to you from Terry, and Terry says, my daughter is entering 12th grade, and based on our income, we don't expect to qualify for financial aid. Do we still need to complete a FAFSA application? That sounds very familiar.
It does.
And we may have just completely covered this in a yes.
Yeah, I think I think this question came in before that segment. I think it was 2 weeks ago, the September 23rd episode. I believe you had an extensive conversation with our colleague Alex Bickford about that very question. So I would definitely recommend going back, listening to the September 23rd episode. I can just say very quickly, reasons you don't have to submit a FAFSA if you know for sure that you're not going to qualify for need-based financial aid. The know for sure point is important in my mind. I wouldn't be taking someone's word for that because your next door neighbor didn't qualify for financial aid. That doesn't mean you won't. Definitely do the net price calculators on the school's websites to know for sure, or as close to for sure as we can get, if you'll qualify for need-based aid or not. If those calculators tell you you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, the other reasons you might want to submit a FAFSA would be, one, there are some schools that have a nasty policy. If you don't apply for financial aid your freshman year, they will never consider you for financial aid. So some people will file it as kind of an insurance policy in case, God forbid, you lose your job 2 years down the line. You've got the FAFSA there on file. It is required if you want to borrow student loans at all. So that's a definite do it if you need student loans. Some colleges, it's certainly not the majority, but there are a number of colleges that require the FAFSA to even consider you for merit scholarships. So those are the things that I would think about why you may want to fill out a FAFSA. Reasons not to are fairly limited. One would be it's just a pain in the neck, and if it's not going to do you any good, and none of those things that we talked about, the loans, the kind of insurance policy, the merit scholarship, are a concern for you, you don't have to do it. Some people are really concerned about the security of their information, and they don't like putting their financial info out there in one more place. Certainly there are lots of protections built into the FAFSA system, but it's not 100% guarantee. There is some level of risk involved with putting your information out there. And then I think a relatively minor issue that people tend to get very worried about is if filing a FAFSA could disadvantage them in the admissions process. We've talked a lot in the past about need blind, need aware schools, where potentially if you need financial aid, there could be some disadvantage in the admissions process in a limited number of cases. In most cases, applying for financial aid is not going to put you into that category where you could be disadvantaged. It's more often needing substantial amounts of financial aid. If you apply but don't need aid, at the vast majority of schools, you're looked at like somebody who didn't apply at all. Basically, you don't need any aid from us. You could have some advantage in the process. There may be very, very limited circumstances at a very small subset of schools where the fact that you applied could potentially put you at a disadvantage, even if you don't qualify. I think the chances of that are very small, and at a very limited subset of schools, I would say most often where they don't have any merit scholarship with merit scholarships with which to woo you.
Right.
At other schools where you fall into this category of applying for aid but not qualifying, many schools would kind of throw some merit scholarship your way to try to entice you with that. But at some schools that don't have those merit scholarships, small potential for some disadvantage there, but I think it tends to be tends to be rare that that could enter the equation in any kind of negative way.
So rare as to almost not be worth mentioning is what I would say too. And filling out the FAFSA so that you could qualify for things like work study or federal loans, you do not actually have to check the box to apply for aid, right? So that's a key difference too. So you might want to
Yeah.
fill out the FAFSA, but not check the box if you've done the net price calculator and you know you're not going to qualify for aid.
Right. We get that question a lot. And in my estimation, I think that that's right, Beth. The question you will find on the Common App about applying for financial aid, schools do actually have the option of phrasing things differently, but in every case I've seen, it says, do you intend to pursue need-based financial aid, or do you intend to apply for need-based financial aid? If you know you're not going to qualify for need-based financial aid and are just wanting merit scholarships, non-need-based loans, in my estimation, you're absolutely fine saying no to that question.
Right, right. But still filling out the FAFSA. So,
yes.
Okay, we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we have more questions that we're going to answer. So don't go away.